You have one. It's the 7 deadly sins and how to bring more of them into your life. Now, the lesbian, somebody give me a microphone so I'm not chained up here. Thank you. All right, so. Now, in the lesbian tent revival, I do believe in sin. It's S-I-N, it's a synaptically inadequate network. It's thinking poorly. It's thinking poorly. Like doing what you're told, shit like that. It's thinking about what's going to put bread on your table today, but going to pollute the planet tomorrow. That's a sin, sisters. Synaptically inadequate network and torn webs. Yes. All right, but that's not. But when the patriarchy talks about sin, they're not talking about that. They love us to think inadequately. So we got to look at what they call sins, especially these deadly sins. Because usually when the patriarchy tells women something's bad for us, it's usually something bad for them and good for us. Like being a lesbian. You know that's considered a sin, so I think we damn well better look at what the other ones are and go hunt them up and get more of them. And in looking at these sins, we're going to use a little formula from the 60s. There's a little litmus test. It's 4 words, sisters. Who benefits from this? Can I hear that, please?
Who benefits from this?
Yeah, you don't need to have a poli-sci degree from Harvard. You don't need to be an economic genius. Who benefits from this? Applies to relationships too, sisters. Uh-oh. 4 little words, and I'm amazed at how often they are not applied. Who benefits from this shit? Who benefits from this? All right, so here we go. Pride, greed, sloth, envy, gluttony, lust, and wrath. We're going to study up on these today, and we're going to get us some more. And I'm thirsty today.
They can use you next door.
They gotta find their clits. That's something every woman gotta do for herself. All right, we're gonna talk about pride because Sister Audrey Lorde, actually Saint Audrey, we have saints in Lesbian Tent Revival. Saint Audrey Lorde was a mighty synapser, and she said we were not supposed to survive. Now she was talking about herself as a woman of color in a racist society, as a woman in a patriarchy, as a lesbian in a heterosexist world, as a poet in a corporate capitalist culture. Was she right, sisters? Can I get a witness? That's right. And you know, when one of my sisters committed suicide in March, we got to talk about this because it's murder by remote control. Suicide is murder by remote control. Because we are not supposed to survive. And they have planted those chips in our brains. So we got to hunt those up, get them out, and connect up so that we're laying the rail that works for us. And she did die. She died of cancer, and she considered that a warrior wound, and I think it was, but she got her revenge because we know that she is now immortal. But let's talk about this pride we're not supposed to have. Sister, we're lesbians. We're lesbians at a tent revival because being lesbian is important to us. And here we are, and no matter what you do, what you achieve, what you don't do, what you don't achieve, you are a lesbian and you had enough sense to get your ass to OLOC. And I'm going to break that down for you. 1, you realize you belong to a tribe. They do not want you to know that. Seriously. 2, you realize you have a right to gather with your tribe. You have a right. Privilege, prerogative, and obligation to gather with your tribe, and then you did all the shit. And some of it takes money, and some of it takes logistics, and some of it takes rearranging your pet care, and God knows what else. But you did all that shit to gather with your tribe here in St. Louis. And do you know how many women have taken their lives because they never figured out they had a tribe?
Yeah.
How many women lived in lonely desperation because they did not know how to find that tribe? So sisters, what you have done by being in this room here today is huge, and it's one of the things you can be proudest of in your whole life. And I don't care if you've cured cancer. This is right up there with it because this right here is the cure to the cancer of the planet. Can I get a witness? up our lesbian sisters. And I'm going to tell you a little story from 1921 from the British Parliament, from the House of Lords. Yeah, now, you know from a name like that the benefits from that. So these lords were discussing lesbians. I wish I'd been there for that. Now, they had a law of gross indecency on the books to deal with gay male sexual behavior, but they didn't have any laws describing lesbian behavior. And a case had come up, and there were 2 women in Scotland, so they were having to deal with it, and they thought, well, maybe we should have a law or something. But now, see, here's the thing. Law against lesbianism is a problem, because if you pass a law against lesbians, you have to actually admit that we exist. And if you admit we exist, people are going to say, well, what's a lesbian? And then you pass this law against, and be like, 2 women that like to have sex with each other. And then people are going to be like, well, why would they do that? And then because they're women, and they're thinking about their experiences with the you-know-what, they're thinking, well, maybe there's something better than that. Can I get a witness? So that's why they didn't have a law against lesbians. It kind of opened Pandora's box, so to speak. And this is what they decided. Now, they had already had discussion about whether they should execute us, incarcerate us, or put us in lunatic asylums. And all that's going on today in different ways. This is what they concluded. And we can laugh, but sisters, this is dead serious, because it's happening now. The House of Lords concluded in 1921 to leave them entirely alone, not notice them, not advertise them. That is the method that has been adopted in England for many hundred years, and I believe that is the best method now. These cases are self-exterminating. These cases are self-exterminating. I had a dear friend who did that in March. That is very clever of them. That is perceptive of them. That is exactly what happens. And today we hear that being a lesbian is a label, and I don't believe in labels. How many of y'all have heard that? Yeah. Sisters, being a lesbian is an identity. It's not a label, it's an identity. It's an identity that comes with a huge amount of history, a tremendous culture, a set of values, a whole community. When somebody says, gets rid of your lesbianism, disappears it because they don't believe in labels, they're doing something incredibly aggressive.
Yeah.
They're doing something worse than reaching into your wallet. They are taking everything. Everything. So don't fall for that shit. But that's one of the ways that this thing that the House of Lords figured out worked. That's the new form this has taken. And a lot of lesbians are foolish enough to go along with it. Do not do that. It's an identity. An identity. Correct them. Let them know what an identity is. It's not a label. And we had a tremendous golden age, as St. Monique Wittig said. We had a flowering, a radical lesbian feminist thought in the 70s, unlike anything in the history of the world. That is hard to find. It is not taught in the universities. It has been disappeared. So that you can say this is a label, not an incredible identity. Sister T. Corinne, wonderful visual artist, deeply engaged with how do we represent lesbians in a way that men can't use pornographically, a question I wish more women would ask themselves.
Amen.
Yeah, can I get a witness?
Yes.
The lack of a publicly accessible history is a devastating form of oppression. Lesbians face it constantly. And sisters, with the rise of queer studies and all that, we are being obliterated. And they say Stonewall was our beginning. It was not. Look up our history. 1968. You want to pick an event, the Miss America beauty pageant. That was the beginning for us. Not for our gay brothers, but for us. Because guess what? We have a different history. We have a different culture. Our most brilliant writers aren't in the syllabus, is blah, 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 blah. And we're talking about pride here, and it is not a parade. It is a deep synaptic commitment to know what our sisters died and continue to die to know. Hold on to our truth for dear life, and love our damaged, fierce, furious selves as if our lives depend on it, because sisters, they do. They do. Anyway, you have to fight the patriarchal gravity humanity, my sisters, by being in this room today. You're walking on the matriarchal moon. You are living, breathing, walking, loving miracles, and you are entitled to the biggest pride in the universe today. So feel it. Yeah. All right? Yes. And I'm whipping through this. I have until 10:30. Yes. Until you're done. Yes. All right. Greed. Now, greed is related, and Sister Alex Dobkin tells us lesbians should take up as much space as possible. So we will be marching next door. No, I think that's good. I think that's a good thing. And of course, as women, we can't be too small, right? Can't be too constricted, too quiet, too humble, too apologetic. Sister Alex Dobkin says, no, take up as much space as humanly possible. And some people will say that's greedy. Who benefits from that? Yeah, and sometimes we do that to each other because we've been trained. You know, they've done some experiments with men, and they found out that when women participate more than 15% in a conversation, the men perceive the women as hogging it. Yes. 15% feels about 50-50 for them. That feels about right. And a woman who's talking 16% of the time is kind of a pushy bitch. Speaking, sister? Pushy bitch, yeah. Hogging the conversation, dominating the conversation at 16%. And we know that we women, we do more than 90% of the work on this planet, which feels about 50-50 for them, right? And we own 1% of the property. Again, 50-50 for them. So when we take our cues from the men, it is like a funny house mirror. It is wildly skewed. We have to constantly correct that. We have to meet with each other, talk to each other, synapse with each other, come together in tent revivals, buy my books. We have to do, I have like 20 podcasts, and you can subscribe to 2 lesbian tent revivals a month. Byproduct, that is sacred. Anyway, but that is true, sisters. When Sister Alex Dobkin says take up as much space as possible, it gets you out of that numbers game. Like, well, how much is my fair share? Just take up as much space as humanly possible. It's probably still not going to be enough. All right? So we got to get greedy. Let's get greedy for that lesbian room of our own that Sister Virginia Woolf talked about. And you know, in the 1970s, we were wildly greedy. And out of that greed, we got bookstores and presses and festivals and music and magic and sisters in power. When we got greedy, the planet started to get on track. And then they disappeared women, and lesbians became a label, and we all went home and got quiet, or some people got corporate. I don't know what the fuck happened, because we had a movement. We had a movement, and it was moving shit. We got to get greedy again. We got to get greedy for the truth and for beauty and life and wonder. And let's get greedy about appreciating, because I think that is actually the highest functioning brain capacity we have. It's not like building a rocket to go to the moon. That's right. It's appreciating. Yes. It is. It is. You know, and I think if you sat at home all day and just appreciated, you would be doing something radical and healing and wonderful for the planet. So anyway, that